How you doing? Yes, that's right, we are back to PNGs or JPEG, whatever image this is. It's not because I'm lazy, but rather it's because I'm out of time. You see, time is very limited these days, and I had originally filmed this video with me on the face cam, but
oh my goodness!
Yeah, apparently I didn't pick that good of a clothing design. You see, I was trying to go for a more of a Bubba Ray Dudley mixed with a Caine and Kinger to give off a good style, but unfortunately, I didn't shave that day, so it looks very off-putting. But nah, the real reason why I didn't use the footage was because I just was a bumbling mess that video. I could not get through and articulate my thoughts about how I would book the end of Digital Circus the best that I could. I don't know why exactly I was having such a hard time. Maybe it was just a rough day that day. But now, with like a day or two left on the clock here, I'm going to redo this video, but essentially go through the same points that I did with the original video that I filmed. Now, the purpose of what I'm doing in this video is I'm going to be booking Arc 3 of Digital Circus, aka Episode 7, 8, and 9. If you don't know, or if you have not been paying attention much to the style of how this show is being structured, the show is being broken up into arcs. Arc 1 being episode 1, 2, and 3, primarily focusing on Pomni and her distress of being trapped in the circus, showcasing the other characters minimally, mainly just the complications with Jax and Ragatha, and then also displaying Zooble's personal animosities with being in the circus, mainly not wanting to participate. And then Arc 2, which was episodes 4, 5, and 6, focused on Gangle's depression, the opposing personalities of Jax and Ragatha, and how they both want to be Pomni's friends, but are dealing with it in different ways, which is causing them conflicts. And then, of course, the submission box storyline with Caine getting upset that the characters don't want to play his games anymore. So now we go into Arc 3, and this arc I'm kind of a little bit worried about because there's only 3 episodes to do this very big storyline that is going to be very crucial to the point of why this show exists. Now, personally, I'm not saying that it's not doable, but I'm saying that I feel like there were a lot of episodes in this series, now looking back with hindsight, that we should have used to build up this storyline a lot sooner rather than waiting till Arc 3 to do so. And what storyline am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the storyline that I had predicted all the way back in my speculations and theories video in September, I believe, which was Jax turning heel, aka becoming the main villain of the series. Now, the reason why I'm a little bit worried is because you only have really 1 or 2 episodes to make this storyline happen, and I have a lot of doubts that episode 7 is going to be the start of that episode. It's going to be the start of his progress becoming a villain, but I don't see Jax full-on becoming a villain until really the end of episode 8, which is why I'm going to explain how I see it, how I see the booking of how these final 3 episodes are going to go. Now, first of all, before we even get to the first, the final 3 episodes here, I would like to say that one of my speculations and theories from that video back in September, here it is, if you want to go check it out, was in fact correct. And that theory specifically focused on the location of where each of the Digital Circus episodes were going to take place in. I said that because we had focused on specific locations for each of the episodes of each of the arcs prior hand, that this arc was going to focus on outside of the grounds, which was something that was introduced in episode 1 of Digital Circus, but we never really got to explore outside of the grounds other than one minute part of episode 5 where they got to stare at the stars in stargazing. So there were 3 whole locations that are located outside of the grounds, which is the Digital Lake, the Digital Carnival, and the Void. So I was right in that episode 7 was going to take place at the Digital Lake because I connected the dots to Ribbit, and now I'm going to connect the dots similarly to episode 8 being at the Digital Carnival to connect them to Kaufmo. Now, episode 9 I also believe to be the one that takes place in the Void, and that's going to do a bunch of various creations of ideas of adventures from a certain somebody, which now I will now begin to get into and build the plot lines of how everything is going to go about. Now, shockingly enough, I don't actually really have a lot of thought or plan regarding episode 7. It doesn't seem to me like episode 7 is very high staked or is going to have a lot of stakes in it. The most that I see episode 7 having, other than Jax having a mental breakdown, is Caine beginning to have a mental breakdown and just not giving a shit about anybody anymore, and is just given up on being a creator of this digital circus. And I can see that playing a big role in how I would book the ending of the storyline. So before we get to that, I'll just essentially say that Caine is just going to be very absent in episode 7. I guess maybe Bubble is going to take the reins of the adventure in this one. And then regarding Jax's slow decline in his mental health is going to lead to one of the biggest pieces and parts of the show that's going to lead straight into its ending. Now, the ending of Digital Circus, I feel, is going to be primarily focused on escaping the circus. The main problem that I have with Digital Circus at the moment is that none of the story or none of the episodes have really focused on trying to escape the Digital Circus or having the characters want or desire to escape the circus and really enjoy the mundane of their lives again, which is something that I have a problem with because that's the purpose of what the show was supposed to be about, was to impact people to value the lives that they have, you know, the ordinary 9-to-5 type of lives that they have over something as chaotic and crazy as the Digital Circus. But I feel like a lot of what the Digital Circus has been making up to this point, a lot of the episodes have been doing the opposite and rather made people want to actually be a part of the circus rather than want to leave the circus. So hopefully these next 3 episodes can do the opposite effect and really home in the point of why the show exists. Otherwise, I'm going to have to rant about it when I eventually review the thing next year. But regarding Jax's slow decline in mental health, the big part of the story that I think is going to come into play here is that the characters have more control and belief over the circus than they really know. And that belief really plays into a lot of the episodes prior, where when the characters believe something is possible or can happen, then it happens. You know, Jax in episode 2, defying physics, Pomni summoning an exit door in episode 1 because she really wanted to escape, episode 6 in its entirety with almost every character pretty much having some layer of belief playing into the role, especially Pomni becoming a sharpshooter, Ragatha summoning the bang gun or reversing the shot onto Jax, Jax seemingly hitting things perfectly and performing all these tricks and stunts despite the fact that he doesn't seem like he's the type of person to be able to do that. And then Zooble also just summoning grenades and guns in her room and her box somehow. And then, of course, how can I forget Kinger's butterfly? The big thing that it was really wow, he just summoned the butterfly. But I think it's more so the character's belief rather than him just being a code creator. Maybe it is part of him knowing that you can just summon things because he's been a part of the circus or he was originally a co-founder, creator of the circus. That's all going to come into play. Don't worry about it. But for right now, the power of belief is a very important part of this final arc because it's going to be discovered specifically by Jax. Now, Jax has been getting little bits and pieces that this is what happens in the world. For example, Caine has seemingly had control over his mind specifically whenever he had moments of confusion or doubt, or just moments in general where he was more vulnerable, where Caine could just take control of his mind and then just have the ability to just feed him information. And so eventually realizing it while he's going through his little mental crisis for Pomni, because he's just a straight jackass and he doesn't know how to handle himself, because he just thinks that pushing everybody away is a great idea. Oh yeah, great idea, Jack. Sure. I'm sure it is. He's going to be remembering a certain friend of his that has passed along into an abstraction, and that is Ribbit, of course. And Ribbit's big role in episode 7 is the fact that Ribbit is going to come back. Yes, at the end of the episode, I believe that Jax's power of belief of desiring and wanting Ribbit to come back is going to bring Ribbit back. But it's not going to be the real Ribbit. In fact, it's going to be an NPC who is Ribbit in Jax's eyes, aka Jax's version of Ribbit, how Jax viewed Ribbit, how Jax saw Ribbit, and now how Jax gets to mold Ribbit. And Ribbit is going to come back to life in the Digital Lake episode, and now Jax is going to suddenly find a new shrivel of hope in that his philosophy of there being no consequences in the circus is seemingly correct. That his friend is now back to life, just the way he wanted her, whatever the fuck Ribbit is, to be. And that's going to be a very big plot point going into episode 8, now that the characters can just return. And I think when we go into episode 8, in fact, that Jax is going to utilize this ability to bring people back with the power of belief to, play into the other characters and mess with them a bit by bringing back all the abstracted characters and showcasing to him, like, hey, see, I told you there's no consequences to the circus. I could just bring them back by just believing that they're back. Hey, look, there's Queenie, there's the whatchamacallit, the slug thing. The puppet? I don't know. I don't know what the other abstracted are. The dog, I think there's a dog somewhere. And Jax is just going to bring them all back, but they're not all going to come back as who they originally were. They're going to be NPCs, and they're going to be molded in Jax's image of who he wants them to be. And so they're all going to come back, and there's just going to be NPCs everywhere in episode 8, and it's going to be a big carnival, big carnival fest. Everyone's back, Kaufmo, everybody, we're having a big fest, but something is wrong, and I feel like the main characters are going to start to realize that, especially the ones like Ragatha. Ragatha's going to realize, I don't remember you being like this. I don't remember this character being like this. They seem to be acting very strange. And this is especially going to play into Ragatha's fear, because Ragatha's big fear was the people of the circus being molded in Jax's image. And now essentially Jax is all these old people who have abstracted, and probably due to Ragatha's positivity at some point, maybe she'll feel guilt about that. That now they're all in Jax's image, and he could just have his way of whatever he wants them to be and just fuck around with the existing characters. And now, obviously, with Caine just kind of being out to himself, he's going to start to realize that, wait a minute, where are all these characters coming from? And he's going to start to question who's really an NPC and who is really a character. And during this process of him trying to figure this stuff out, he is going to get one of the main characters killed, because he's going to think one of the main characters is an NPC. And through thinking that one of those main characters is an NPC, he's going to obliterate them from existence entirely. Now, who do I think this character that Caine is going to erase is going to be? Now, it's not who you think it's going to be. A lot of people are probably going to say Zooble, but if I'm being perfectly honest with you, Zooble doesn't really serve a big purpose or role at all in the story, and I don't even know how I would book a character like Zooble, because a character like Zooble is not necessary, Every aspect regarding Zooble's character are aspects within the other characters. So to me, I don't know how exactly I would work Zooble into this ending. She's the one character that I'm kind of like, I don't know, it could go any direction for her. But I know that Caine is not going to think that Zooble's an NPC, because Caine is fully aware that Zooble is not NPC. Zooble is just someone who pisses him off. But who I think Caine is going to think is an NPC is Gangle. Now, there have been little tiny hints here and there that Caine seemingly views Gangle in a slightly different light than the rest of the players. Now, never once do we really see Caine really interact with Gangle. Yes, he's mentioned Gangle's name before. Yes, he's assigned Gangle to being the head honcho of the fast food joint. But Caine has always kind of had a certain viewpoint of Gangle, to the point where even an episode like episode 5 specifically has its moments where Gangle in Caine's mind doesn't really matter. Like, if you look at all the different adventures in episode 5, Gangle is pretty meaningless in each one of those adventures. And yes, I'm aware that a lot of them are just Jax based, you know, like, oh, Jax wants Gangle to be a rhinoceros, she gets shot, and then that's that. And then another one where she has the bomb. But if you look at the other ones too, it feels like the episode in of itself is purposely avoiding Gangle, or is trying to cut Gangle out of the picture. We have the stargazing where Zooble hands Gangle a sandwich, and then they cut away from Gangle entirely. Same thing happens in the softball game, where it's Gangle's turn to bat and is going to perform a home run and, you know, perform Ragatha's trick to officially score. And they completely cut away from Gangle. They don't even show Gangle getting the home run, which would have been a big character moment. And you would think for an episode that's very character based that that's a good moment to have, is Gangle performing a home run and, you know, getting and showcasing that she is very capable on her own. But they didn't do that. They purposely cut it away. And if this is not bad writing, which I'm hoping it's not, because that's going to be a part of my rant if it is, but if this is intentional and for a reason, then my reason is that Caine just flat out didn't care, and that the way for the creator, Gooseworks, to showcase that Caine doesn't care is by focusing on Ragatha, Jax, and Pomni over Gangle in this scene, which could indicate that Gangle's not somebody to really be seen as a true, genuine character, or someone to really care about, which is a bit contradictory to the prior episode, which was mainly Gangle focused, but also didn't do much for Gangle's character at all because she didn't really progress. A lot of small issues here and there, but nonetheless, I think that these are like little hints to the fact that Caine just does not view Gangle as a legitimate character. And there's also other little details here and there too. In episode 6, Zooble specifically mentions how Gangle is seemingly the only character to have an avatar, or like be an avatar-esque character. Like, if you were to pick an avatar character as an NPC, or at least I feel like that's what it's indicating towards. It's indicating towards the fact that the avatar is more representative of a NPC character with changing emotions rather than being a genuine person. And then you have the big one, the big motherlode, the big one that to me is like flat out the dead giveaway, which is episode 5, when Caine makes evil clones for each of the characters. And I know for a fact that it's Caine, and we all should know that it's Caine, because Ragatha specifically states that she did not include the evil clone gimmick a part of the softball game when she put that into her submission.
That wasn't in my suggestion.
And so that means that Caine created evil versions and opposites of each of the characters, but there's only one character who is not a part of that lineup.
Why don't I get an evil clone?
Now, that would indicate that for some reason, Caine does not care about Gangle, or does not view Gangle in the same way that he views the other characters, to the point where he doesn't even know what an evil version of Gangle would seem like. And he had to replace Gangle with a complete NPC, almost stating that Gangle herself is seemingly an NPC. And for a glitching AI that's eventually going to break down, because as you can clearly see, Caine is losing it, if he had to make an estimation as to who's an NPC and who's a player, which he clearly has stated in episode 2 is tough for him to figure out, let alone alone one time. But now he has to deal with a bunch of NPCs. I think that for sure he's gonna accidentally snap Gangle out of the existence and kill Gangle. And besides, there's other little things that I think are gonna happen too in episode 7 specifically that are also gonna display that Gangle has seemingly NPC-esque things that would make Caine believe that she's an NPC. Because if I remember correctly, there was a post once that Gooseworks stated that Gangle was going to be walking on water, and this being the beach episode in episode 7, Gangle would most likely walk on water at some point. And to a code developer, if a character is glitching out and walking on water, you would think that there's a problem with the game. Rather, not so much that the character is glitching and walking on water, but an NPC would rather be walking on water. You know, there's a lot of these little things that I think are going to play a big role into Caine thinking that Gangle is the NPC and is going to kill Gangle in the process. And that's also going to play a big role into Jax's character, because even though Gangle is going to be snapped out of existence, Jax is not going to really care, because Jax can just bring back Gangle, and now he gets to make Gangle exactly the way he wanted to make her. Completely depressed and completely devoid of happiness. His perfect punching bag. And that's going to play a really big role in the psychology of these characters as they realize that they're just going to be replaced by Jax, and that they're starting to lose control of what's going on in the circus, and that they're going to be essentially cannon fodder to Jax's new evil ways. And the thing about this is that I like the idea that Jax doesn't think that he's becoming a villain, because clearly he doesn't see himself as the villain. He sees himself as the funny one, despite the fact that Pomni called him the villain.
What's your archetype then? The villain?
But this plays a good role into all of that, because Jax is naturally becoming a villain by torturing all these people, thinking that there's no consequence to what he's doing because it's all a part of the game. And I like that the characters are going to now have a legitimate reason as to why they need to get the fuck out of the circus ASAP. Otherwise, things are going to get really bad for them. And I always viewed the ending of episode 8 to be based off of the original book to which the story is inspired from, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, where the characters are in cages and the main villain, Am, is kind of holding control over them. And I think at some point after Caine accidentally gets rid of Gangle, that he's going to glitch and Jax is going to have the ability to take control of him temporarily, or maybe just seemingly permanently, and he's just going to have all the characters trapped, Kinger, Pomni, Ragatha, and Zooble all trapped in cages, and he's just going to now be able to torture them and create all these different adventures and scenarios for them to go through, trial and error of vicious cycles. And that's what episode 9 is going to focus on, which is why I feel like things needed to be played out beforehand, because now we only have one episode to not only display Jax as a main villain, but also wrap everything up. Which it would have been even worse had the show been 8 episodes, which it was supposed to be 8 episodes, but Gooseworks managed to get Glitch to give him one more episode. And in that episode, we got the beach episode. So hopefully the character development is not too rushed, and that we can still hit the beats that we need to hit without running through everything. And I think still the way they find out how to escape the circus through Kaufmo's original paranoid beliefs, and that through believing they can get out of Jax's scenario because they can overwrite what Jax creates. And that is going to be the main primary storyline of episode 9, which is going to be mainly in the void, because they're going to be creating vast different adventures to go on and to counteract against Jax. And each of the characters, I feel like, are going to have their own individual storylines, except for Zooble. I genuinely, I wish I could tell you what happens to Zooble. I don't know what happens to Zooble. I feel like Zooble is just going to be another cannon fodder to Jax. You know, Zooble's obviously going to be suffering over the fact that Gangle is gone, and then Jax is pretty much going to feed Zooble to the abstractions, and then she's going to glitch out. I think that's pretty much the end of Zooble's character. I don't really see much else for Zooble's character. Like I said, I see Zooble as a pointless character. I don't know what purpose she can serve in the overall story, other than maybe trying to defend Gangle's death and honor, but that's not going to last long, and Zooble, I don't see her lasting long either. So I think Jax is just going to kill her off by putting her in the pit of abstraction and having the abstracted pretty much tear her to pieces. In terms of Ragatha, I feel like Ragatha is going to abstract. I said it before, and I'm worried about it because I don't want her to abstract. I would really love for for Ragatha to make it through this. But in the case of scenario that Ragatha does abstract, it's probably because of Gangle's death, and Ragatha's gonna blame herself for, you know, not being able to protect the Gangle, which is the relationship before there was Zooble and Gangle. There was supposed to be Ragatha and Gangle, which I wish we saw more of. I wish we saw that fleshed out more, but, you know, we had to put Zooble in there for some reason. But as you can clearly see, I don't like Zooble's character. Zooble, meaningless to the story, but yeah. Ragatha, I feel like, is going to abstract, and I feel like my original theory in my Speculations Theories video regarding Ragatha is going to come true at some point, is that Ragatha, despite having lost her mind, despite having abstracted, is still filled with so much positivity that she is going to be the one abstracted that still retains some level of humanity to her. In that, the same way how Kinger saw Queenie and was managed to get his hand on Queenie and not get glitched out himself and calm Queenie down because Queenie showcased some levels and signs of humanity, I feel like the same thing is going to happen with Ragatha, and maybe it might take place in the dark because the dark might play a role into it all, the same way that it does Kinger. But I feel like Ragatha is going to be the one abstracted that still, because she's filled with so much positivity and she's kept that positive attitude even in her darkest days, that she's going to overcome the abstraction itself. Not necessarily maybe come back to life, but still be like an abstraction, but have control over the abstraction, you know? Have some level of humanity enough to help the other characters escape, or at least help Kinger and Pomni, because they're going to be the last two standing, escape. And this is especially in episode 9, I think Kinger is going to play a bigger role in that he's gonna get his memory back, or he's gonna have to remember, and Pomni's gonna have to help him remember, which plays into her own name, which is supposed to mean remember, and everything is memory based, yes. And that through helping Kinger remember his memories, he's going to try and reach through to all these different NPC versions of the characters and see if he can implant the seeds of their previous lives and their memories into regaining themselves as the NPCs, sort of like making the NPCs self-aware. If you remember in episode 2, Caine said that the AI can become very self-aware, or at least to a point that they're a lot more intelligent to be able to do so, and we saw that with Gummy Goo. And so I can see where all these NPC versions of the prior characters can now regain memories of what their past human lives were like and become the actual copies of who they once were again, and, you know, regain those memories to be able to counteract Jax and kind of stop his big scheme, which might also be kind of like a reflection to the other characters like Pomni, who might actually just be a copy, a digital copy of herself, and that she's actually just fine in the real world. Who knows? I don't know which direction they could take it, but I could definitely see that being like a reflective thing that happens in the ending, where it's like these characters, these NPCs regain their conscious memories to become the characters technically again, but they're just, you know, manufacturing the memories of their past lives into these new bodies, these new NPC versions of them. And then it's going to be revealed that Pomni technically is the same deal, because she's just a digital clone of who she was as a human being in the real world. So it's all going to play into a factor, and the memories of all these characters are going to play into trying to reach through to Jax. And of course, if there's one character that you want to reach through to Jax, it's got to be Ribbit. And that regaining Ribbit's memory, and maybe even utilizing Gangle's drawings as a way to depict who Ribbit once was, to bring back Ribbit's exact memory, because Ribbit did abstract before Kaufmo, so Gangle was probably there and was probably able to draw some imagery of what Ribbit was like when Ribbit was alive. And so trying to reach through to Jax, I think this is a good way to display and showcase to Jax that there is in fact consequences to all of his actions, and to make him see that he's been essentially fucking up. He's been doing some bad shit, and that he has essentially been harming all his friends this whole time, and make him see the error of his ways, but by giving him the forgiveness that he needs to be able to finally, you know, give it up and accept reality. And I don't know if Jax is going to abstract because of this, or if he's just going to want to, or if he's just going to crash out, you know, if he's just going to glitch out of existence. But I know that Jax, you know, he's not going to get a proper send-off. He's probably going to have a miserable ending. in realizing that he has essentially ruined his life. But at least he can hand over the reins to Pomni, who now can finally control the circus, being back in the void, and regain everything that was lost. So it also plays into my last theory too, which was that Pomni would be the sole survivor, which I do believe so, because even though Kinger's going to be with her, I feel like by restoring the circus, Caine is going to be restored. He's going to come back, but he's going to not want Pomni to leave. You know, he's going to be like, man, I couldn't make adventures for my players. I really wanted to do this. You know, I really wanted to be a better host. And this is where I think Kinger is going to decide and choose to stay behind and always be there for Caine. You know, playing into his own philosophy of never letting somebody feel like they're not wanted or needed. And he's going to stay there for Caine and play all the adventures that Caine ever makes for him. And that is going to be the end of Digital Circus, where Kinger stays behind with Caine, and Pomni finally gets to leave the circus, having lost pretty much everyone she's ever met. But she gets to finally view her miserable, mundane life as something to be appreciative of. And hell, I even said in my Speculations and Theories video that there might even be a tease for a potential season 2, because now that Pomni would be the sole survivor and the only person that makes it out alive from the circus, you can take a season 2 in many different directions. Like, is Pomni gonna be a little bit crazy? Like, did all this even happen? You know, were you just making it up, Pomni, or is that all just a dream because she's the only person that can verify it? Or somebody else can eventually search it, find the digital circus, and then Pomni's gonna have to try and return and help them out and make them escape. You know, there's different directions if Gooseworks ever wanted to continue it. But if you want finality, I think the finality is Pomni being the sole survivor, and finally, you know, through that experience of losing all these new friends that she made, finally being able to accept the mundane life that she has been ignoring and she's been running away from by going and exploring into places to where that got her stuck here in the first place. And so now she could finally kind of live an enjoyable life, and who knows, maybe have a family of her own, maybe explore a new adventure, or see all the beauty that she missed in life itself. And I think that would be a perfect ending to the Digital Circus. But that's just how I would book Arc 3 of the Amazing Digital Circus, that wraps up all the loose ends and all the zip ties, except for the episode 5 mannequin. I still don't know what that's about, and if the only thing that was about was just the joke in episode 6, well, that fucking sucks. So let me know if you would change or book certain things a little bit differently. I know some of you would probably want Zooble to play a bigger role, but I just do not know what the hell they were going to do with Zooble's character, because Zooble's character is just a whole nothing burger for me. And a lot of what Zooble's character is about, which was about the body that she had, I feel like they were doing with Pomni already, and they should have just focused with Pomni about. In fact, a lot of everything that they gave Zooble in the show should have been to other characters. You know, the friendship with Gangle should have been for Ragatha. The identity crisis should have been for Pomni. The grumpy attitude should have been for Jax. You know, you had all this for the other characters, and yet you just, for some reason, just incorporated this character that just doesn't play a big role. But maybe some of you might come up with a better idea of how they're going to play Zooble's character into all of this. But that's just me. That's how I would book it. And I am curious to hear how you would book it. But next week, we're going to find out if I am correct again. Because after getting that high of being correct from my previous speculation theories, I can only hope that this is how things go. And granted, I want to make it clear too, that if it's not how things go, I don't really care, okay? It's fine. I just want a good product at the end of the day. I just want a good ending. I want a good roundabout story. I am sick of stories that just take me on a ride and then just drop me off in the middle of no man's land. So hopefully this show can end good. I'm only going to be reacting to episode 7. The reaction will not come out on the day that episode 7 releases, but rather a week after, because I got more important things to work on. So I will see you then. As a matter of fact, let's face the facts. I'm here to give you a reality check. If you can't handle that, I'll beat you with a baseball bat. Best believe. Arrivederci, you bitch ass motherfuckers. Hey everybody.
See.